I'm not sure if we're on. And now I'm on. Okay. Greetings, Internet. My name is Leap. I use he, him, and welcome to Smallfolk, a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons homebrew game where tiny creatures go on grand adventures. It is so good to see you. I am surrounded by good friends. I think I'm pointing in the right way. And it has been a hot minute since our table one has gotten back to the game. Hey, something that I don't know if I did and we didn't do, we didn't start Audacity. So let's clap in. And just like our last stream, this ain't Critical Role, man. So you're going to see some of the sausage being made. So I'm going to press. Oh no, and of course it stops on me. Okay, well, I'm going to do some intros while this is going, and we're going to just run with it because that's my life right now. It is it is really good to see everyone in the chat. I've been promised that at least one friend is going to be here to mess with me. So Alvin, thank you for messing with me if you are here. And let's see if this is going. Nope, it is not. All right. But what is Smallfolk? Smallfolk is my good friend Jay and myself, because of a great Twitter conversation and a bunch of talking around town, decided that we would create a homebrew world and homebrew species where basically you can run Dungeons and Dragons for small animals. So if you like Redwall, if you like that kind of exciting little space, we got you, fam. And if you want to know how to run your own game and where you can find the source documentation, in our chat right now or in future games, if you are hearing this on a podcast or watching on YouTube, if you hit !Smallfolk, you will see our document where you can see all of the races and stats. And if you use D&D Beyond, you can also get those races there. So if you hit !Beyond right now, you will get a link to our document or to that link where you can make those races for you there. Now, I am running. Is everybody else running right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do a clap in. We always do 2 because it's never perfect. And Embers makes these podcasts for us. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Amazing. That was pretty good. 3, 2, 1.
I can work with that.
Thanks, man. All right. So now that that's done, let's get some intros. We believe at Inclusive Tables. So here at Smallfolk and Insight Check, we are going to introduce ourselves, our pronouns, our characters, their species and class, but more importantly, their pronouns as well. So we are going to start with our friend Cal, and then we will go Shiny, and then McBoots, and then Embers. Cal, if you'd like to start us off.
All right. So, hi, I am Cal, Andrew, Calgernon, lots of other names on the internet. My character's name is Wensleydale Beestinger, no relation. He is a Rivertail Ranger, which is an Otterfolk race in the Smallfolk world. He and I both use he/him pronouns.
Amazing.
And I am Shiny, or Shiny Batgirl on Twitter. I'm playing Long Sparkly Trail, who looks like this. My art's from Sam Ray Duke on Twitter, and it's awesome. And Long Sparkly Trail is a druid, and we both use she.
Amazing. And McBoots.
Hello, I am Mick Boots, also known as Michaela, or a plethora of other names, but my pronouns are she, they, and today I will be playing Jink the Pine Marten Druid, and Jink's pronouns are he, him.
Cool. Hi, I'm Embers Tide on the internet, and I use he, him, as does Howie Leaf Ears, who's a Batfolk rogue, and who has a honey problem, but he can stop whenever he wants.
just that one more, right, man? That you like whenever he feels like it.
Right.
I'll tell you when I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
He can stop whenever he wants to, but he can't want to, and that's the problem.
There we go. The true problem. And as I said, my name is Leap. My human name is Sean, but who's that? I don't know. And I use he, him, and I have the privilege and honor of getting to play all the weirdos that these friends are going to meet along the way. Now, if you are if you are watching on YouTube, or if you are watching with us right now live, have seen some very cool art and also heard some very amazing music. This music has been made through our good friends at D&D Raps, which you can find at D&D Raps on Twitter. And if you would like to have this music for your own home game or stream or whatever, it is available right now. If you hit !music, you will be able to see, I don't know, you will be able to see a link to this amazing thing. And it is pay what you can. And all of the proceeds, Embers, can you talk about where the proceeds go to, actually?
All of the proceeds go to help the animals. Specifically, they go to help the World Wildlife Federation, which is all about helping the animals. No longer about big, sweaty wrestling people.
And I mean, the big sweating wrestling people are wonderful, but since we figured the animals, it seemed on brand. So it's a great cause. It's incredible music. My mind is continuously blown that it has been made for us, and we hope you enjoy it. And thank you very much. If you're
Rule
using
number
YouTube.
1 of Smallfolk D&D is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson still gets paid.
Rule number 1. I'm writing that down right now. Dwayne gets paid with 3 eyes.
I should mention that I'm renaming my character to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Man, you intentionally lost all of the money in the gambling game. You did this to yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a mechanic that we are going to try out at this moment for this stream, and I'm thinking that we might do it for all the other streams if we like it, and if you as the viewer likes it. Every single player is going to start with an advantage point. So it is like an inspiration point, except it needs to be used. Oh, did my mic switch? Oh no, sorry. 1 second. Let me try that.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. This mic has a bit of a problem, but hopefully that's better now. Okay. So the advantage point is like a charge that they have to use within this few hours that we have spent together. If they have an inspiration point, they can hold on to that, use that too. That works normally. The advantage point can be given as a gift to somebody else in a time of need. So some of my favorite streams and places have mechanics like this, and we thought that we would try it out. Let us know what you think. Now, before we get started, one final thanks. I would like to thank my friend Jay for helping with the foundation of this thing. I would like to thank our incredible producer, Jereka, for the art, the structures around me, the magicking of the internet to allow this to happen. I would like to thank Eric Alloway for some of the art that you have already seen and that you will continue to see in our very quick break. I would like to thank all of these incredible people whom I'm surrounded with for taking time out of their very busy lives to spend time with us tonight. And most importantly, I would like to thank you, the listener and viewer and watcher. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. So I've checked everything off my list, and let's get started. This is that point in Critical Role, which we ain't, where they're all like, and they have that like cutscene. Yeah. Anyways, when
Exactly. And the beat drop. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay.
No, it's good. Now, when last we saw our heroes, they had been traveling for 2 days straight underground with a mouse merchant named Tufts. And his goal, he has hired them to help ferry him through an old underground, possibly haunted passage that would take them to a far off field within the valley known as Lavender Lone. Within this valley is a tree where a secluded cloister of mice have been making honey that is both rare incredibly expensive and potentially magic. It has been 2 days of dark and deep, grueling travel. On day 2, our friends had set up camp, and they had stumbled upon a migration of potato bugs, which haphazardly made their way through camp, some of which caught on fire and caused a terrible ruckus within our site. 1 second here. I'm just typing something. Okay, excellent. So then our heroes, that's where we're starting. We have had a long rest, but unfortunately, the combat happened right at the very last watch as Jink, our Pine Marten druid, was looking over the final stretch of the night. Everyone, the sound of this migration of hundreds of these things just rattles off into the distance of the tunnel from which you came. It's that kind of low grade shake of a faraway train. The vibrations around you slowly receding, and to the point where you can't tell if you're remembering it or feeling it or hearing it. And then eventually there's silence. The merchant Tuft, who you surround yourself with, has been completely shaken by this. He looks at the ones on the ground, up on their backs and bellies, some of them burnt, some of them destroyed because of the combat of this fine party. And he looks to you and says, I know that we didn't really get the best rest, but I really do think that we should keep going. Does anyone have any concerns with that at all?
No, I think it's probably a good time to get going, actually.
You never know when the beetles will come back.
With that, he kind of tightens up and he frightens a little bit. The croaky cleric, your brother, whom, Casey, you're not here with us today. We miss you, buddy. We will see you as soon as possible. I forgot to say that. The croaky brother kind of puts a hand over him and tries to say some calming words, which somewhat soothe this small individual. And he says, "Well, okay, I'll just write. This will need to be documented. So if you don't mind, I'll just take some quick notes, and if whatever's left of camp that needs to be taken down, I'll do that. But I do agree we should get on our way." And he takes out that book that he's been so actively scribbling in, and you see him kind of tuck himself into a corner and begin to write furiously to himself. How does the party prepare for their journey?
So Wensleydale is walking around looking at the bodies of the bugs that have been killed, and he's got his quarterstaff, and he's sort of like, poking into the side and lifting it up and looking at the underside and just kind of looking at each one a little bit, and then he kind of goes, takes his quarterstaff and stabs it through the thorax of the thing, like pulls that part off the rest, flips his quarterstaff over and takes a big bite.
Amazing.
And so that's going to be his road snack this morning.
Yeah, I think Howie is very excited about the same thing. So he takes one of the more kind of barbecued ones and just holds it like a watermelon and just sort of meanders down the tunnel, just munching along on his way.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
LST looks generally grossed out. She sort of just slowly crawls out of her she's probably hiding in her shell and kind of oozes out and makes herself like a good berry and is just shaking her head slowly at the savage.
Jinx kind of doing the same, just kind of like looking around, watching what everyone's up to, and he'll check on High and make sure High's good. Probably dust off some bug guts, uh, polish up his little horns, and uh, make sure that he's like ready to go, nice and clean for the next leg of the journey. Trailing bug guts behind him.
High, you can tell that High is sticking very close to you. It, like last time we learned that High does not do well in tunnels for too long, and so it their spirit was a little low, and it seems to be as much the case today. So with the very first, so High is right kind of beside you, happy to buzz, kind of nuzzle up as close as possible, land on a bug gut free shoulder, and be happy to take a rest as you do some of the walking, then sometimes up around and then back a little bit.
Yeah,
At the very
I'll
first crunch
hum him
that,
a little. Sorry.
no, please.
I'll hum him a little Irish jig as we walk along to soothe High.
Amazing. His wings, once you start humming, there's that kind of cadence, that rocking to some of the Irish jig, and it's one that I assume that you've sung to him before. So he flies up from your shoulder, and the pattern of his beating wings matches the cadence of it. He's trying to kind of hit the rhythm. And you can tell that his spirit has been lifted a little bit because it reminds him of other places. So you hear that, like, there's that almost like that 1-2 that's like the like as you're singing along. The very first crunch of the bug that Wensley took, you could see that Tufts all of a sudden stops writing, and his quill just goes, and he looks out in horror, and just watches you for a minute, nods, and goes back to write and comes to terms with it. Having finished his notes, he takes out the 2 glow bugs that have been used as lanterns for this entire trek, and they assume their normal places, one at the very front and one at the back, as they kind of buzz and light the way. Can you please tell me the walking order today?
I think Wednesdale's probably going to be up first just because he's not waiting for everybody else.
Yeah, I think Abendstern and Howie would probably be following him.
Mm-hmm.
LST is usually bringing up the rear with her little spider lantern.
Yeah, and Jink and High will be right in front of LST, just kind of in the back sometimes.
You can tell, while all of you are seasoned adventurers, and while this is definitely not comfortable, long journeys are something that you have done, you can tell that the spirit as well as the muscles of this merchant are kind of fading on morning number 3. He has his small empty cart that he's pulling behind him, refusing the help of anyone who offers. And LST, while you and Jink were definitely left to the rear for the first 2 days, just by lack of strength, you find this mouse beside you, just kind of catching his breath and trying to dig in, and taking a minute and stopping and rubbing his face. And you can tell that the wear of this has really hit him. Hours pass as fallen apart in a way. It is just dug out dirt and stone. There you see very thin mycelia from the top roots, and you could tell that it was going cold and getting down. But a few hours in, you get a sense of an incline going back up. And that kind of wet cold that you were experiencing slowly, it's still there, but what was kind of haphazard turns becomes more focused and more intentional, even though it is still dug out. And in the very far distance, you can see a light glowing, and what seems like the ending of a wall, that is at this point just a few hundred paws away from you. This once Tufts noticed, anyone who's close to him hears a sigh and says, "Ah, finally." And he kind of tries to pick up his pace a little bit and tries to give his last push, and it makes it 5 steps before he's back to that slow pull uphill. Wensley and Howie, being the first to get there, you see that the tunnel ends just naturally. It just stops, with one small torch that is actually fire. So it is fire that's just burning on a single torch. Looking up, you can see above you there is a circular wood door, and there is a small rope that is hanging from a hole in that door.
Wensleydale is already pulling it.
Does the door have any? Dang it!
Excellent. You could ask your question, but the die has been cast.
Can I, as we're approaching it? Oh, let me frame it this way.
Yeah.
As we're approaching it, and before we can open it, can I see any kind of markings or insignia or anything like that on the door? Any carving or anything?
That's a good question. It is a pretty simple door. It seems like okay. It seems that my audio is cutting out, so if there's anything that you are missing, please let me know and I can go back.
Okay.
My computer is experiencing difficulties. My rig is dying, basically. But if we're good now, I will continue.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
let's investigate this door.
Yeah. The door is
So
simply this door is simply made. There doesn't seem to be old. Definitely you can see the age of it, that kind of that shading of dark that happens over time. But there doesn't seem to be a latch. There doesn't seem to be a knob. There is just this single string coming out of a hole of it. Wensleydale, you pull the string and it has a certain amount of give, and then you can tell that it like stops. And then you kind of release, it goes up again, and you pull, and it has that same sense, right? Just like over and over and over again. After a few minutes of this, like how long are you pulling it for? Like, is it 5? Is it 20? Is it like, how much are we talking?
It's definitely too much.
Good.
I don't want to say, like, if it were to take several minutes before anything happened, eventually he'd like get bored and give up. But I'm basically imagining the person who's standing at the doorbell, like pushing the doorbell until someone opens the door. It's not
100%.
quite that bad. It's not quite that bad. But, you know, like he pulls it 4 or 5 times and then waits 15 to 30 seconds. And if nothing else happens, he tries again 2 or 3 times. And so he pulls it a couple times every minute or so until something happens.
So there's about 5 minutes of you pulling it, waiting, going again, waiting, just consistently 5 minutes straight of this. And then eventually, and by this time, the rest of the party is able to get there. and you see that as you are getting close, Jinx and Long Sparkly Trail, you see that uh, the the merchant Tuft is taking out some notes, and he's like, you can see him going over some things, and he's like,
Okay.
okay, so. And he looks, okay, first thing is to pull, but don't pull. Oh, and he sees that you just going,
Uh-huh.
like, and he just, oh, okay. Oh, no. And
Okay.
is you something you want to do, Embers?
Yeah, I have a question. Are his notes in his book that he's writing in, or is it separate?
His notes are in the book that he's been writing in, but you can tell that he's
Ah.
like flipped to the front of it.
I just want to take a moment where there's a distraction to try and steal that friggin' book, but this is not that time.
No, sorry, man. So you hear a giant of a latch, like a heavy kind of stone, like metal or wood latch, and then there is a very slow pulling up of this of this door, and there is a wash of daylight that kind of comes down, um, and you see. One second here. I just need to get my notes. Um, you see above you there is a mouse that is you see okay there is the outline and it takes a minute to focus, but there is a very small mouse who is completely white. He is very, very fuzzy. And it is hard to tell from this vantage point because there's only the light from above, but he is wearing a, a thick cloak or robe. Um, and he is leaning on a cane looking down. And he looks and he says, "Now, what is this?" And he makes eye contact with Tufts. And he says, "No!" And then goes back, and then you hear, "Close it!" And you just hear the door, and the door slams back down. And Tufts is like, "I knew it. I knew. Oh, okay. Well, my friends, I told you that there might be some difficulty, and I really wish you had just pulled on it once. Um, but I need to get up there. We need to get up there. So I'm not quite sure how, but can somebody solve this situation for me?" And you can tell that he is frustrated and just kind of shaking nearly with with just yeah with being upset.
LST kind of slowly goes up beside him and pokes him with an eye stalk and says, "Gotta be faster next time, buddy."
He looks. He's like, "Hey, well, maybe if we try pulling it just once, very slowly, maybe the mouse will come back, and maybe we can explain ourselves to see if they'll let us in because we really need to get in if this is going to work. Um, do you want me to pull it or can I trust you?" And he's looking right at Wesley, who still has I assume, still has the rope in his hand. Mm-hmm.
Wensleydale just goes, like, just pulls it down once, probably a little bit faster than Tufts wanted him to, but he's trying to comply this time. So
Yeah,
there's probably like
yeah,
a tiny wince from Tufts, but it's it's more or
yeah.
less what he asked for.
Okay, he does. You see a wince, right?
Uh
He
huh.
winces, and thank you. And
No
there,
problem.
there is there's a pause,
I've
and
got two of those.
someone make mm, good one. You someone make a perception check. Actually, if you have advantage on listening ones, you can take that.
I
No,
got a 15.
15. Okay.
15.
Wensley.
6.
Perception.
Yeah. LST.
6.
Okay. And so, uh, Howie, you can't hear it, like you can't really hear it, but you think like it's just kind of on the periphery. You think you can hear movement but above the door, and you think that you can hear like a couple voices, but you can't make them out. And then a few minutes pass, and Tufts is about to say, well, maybe if we break and the door, so you hear the and it starts to very slowly open up again. And the mouse is looking down. Same mouse, big, like big white fluffy ears, like almost like wide, um, furry, as if he needs a tremendous brush. A stern little white face with red beady eyes, holding a very simple cane. Looks down, big whiskers that kind of fall into this like just this unkempt fur. And he looks and he says,
Okay. Here's what I'm gonna go with. I have
Okay.
a plan.
I'm
So
already scared.
I'm going to. So Howie sort of suavely comes up to this individual as close as he can without encroaching, and he'll make his pitch. Say, dearest mouse friend, dear mouse friend, we've traveled a long way and faced great danger. I have to ask you a question, and it comes in the form of a story. I need just a few seconds, but I believe it is of grave importance, and I think it may be critical to your community that you hear me out.
Make a persuasion check.
Okay.
Is there
Okay.
like a surface up there that LST can see from where she's?
Yeah, you can see it's you can see a wall. You can't see a floor because it's basically like you look up and you're just seeing like it's hard to tell because the wash of sunlight.
Oh
Um
shit.
Ooh,
That looks good.
It's
that
a
looks
blah blah
good.
blah 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 blah.
There we go. All right.
Please. It's a 23.
Amazing.
Crit.
Nice. Excellent.
So what does this red-eyed, fuzzy, white, puffy mouse person say?
He looks and he says, best come up then. I'll get the tea ready. And he says, and then he kind of he hops. You see him kind of turn around, and you hear you hear a scuttle, and you hear a very intentional kind of like tap of a cane. And then you don't see him, but then a minute later, a rope ladder comes down, so that anyone who needs it can climb up. Um, and there is a wash of relief over Tufts. He just is, oh, okay. Well, uh, let's go, I guess. And he is the first one to start trying to make his way up the ladder. Um, who's coming up next?
I'll go up next, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah,
I want to stay
Wednesdale's
close
gonna
to this
follow.
white mousy friend.
Mm-hmm. So everyone gets up. LST, I assume like you probably just climb right up the wall. Like I don't think you would even use the rope ladder, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say if it's possible with the way that it's connected, she'd probably just slam her way up the wall and up the ceiling and through the hole.
100%. Maybe when everyone's up so no one's looking, but you just kind of like
Oh yeah.
you reach to the end of the wall and then up, and then you just kind of like curl your way 100%. You do
Yeah,
that.
she's like, don't worry about me. I'll make my way.
Mm-hmm. So you find yourself, once you come on up, and you find yourself in a brightly lit, very large room that is a giant half circle. You think that it is the entire division, like it's a whole half of a big tree. The outside
Hmm.
wall is surrounded by large circular windows that are like it's almost like tainted glass, but it is all of the same kind of tint of color. Um, that is just it's like 3 stories high of these.
Mhm.
It is a very sparse and simple room. There are not many mice in it, but there are a few who are quietly working. You see a few long tables around the middle with chairs, some of which still with a meal, a few mice kind of cleaning up after a midday meal, you think. There are along the wall that you think is the clear division between the rest of the tree, the half of the half circle. You see a few workstations, some of which have tools and utensils, some of which have vials and other things, and one or two that are completely empty. On the opposing side from you, you can see an iron cast stove, like black metal with a small chimney going outside. Along the outer wall, there's a set of stairs that goes up along the 3 stories high, and it leads to another hole along the roof, which you see a mouse on its way up um, towards whatever is upstairs.
Hmm.
There is a single green door. It is large enough that a couple mice could get through, probably with a wagon and supplies, but any of the taller creatures would probably still have to duck. Its doorknob, a bright yellow right in the middle. And there is a very utilitarian kind of barn door that is on the dividing wall between the rest of the tree. There's a smaller door that you see a mouse kind of closing behind it as it moves into whatever's next there. And as you get up, you see this one small mouse telling the rest of them, also completely white, also very furry, all of them wearing these dark, not dark, sorry, these thick, light purple robes. Um, that kind of cover them right down to the arms and have a hood that some of them have up with holes for ears, some of them have down. Um, and you see him quietly, very in a whisper, kind of giving some instructions and pointing to things. And the 2 younger mice kind of nod and look at you and nod again and then scurry off quietly but diligently, to finish up cleaning and organize some things and pay no heed to you. This mouse turns around and looks directly at Tufts sternly for a minute. Tufts is about to speak, and then he looks directly at Howie, and Howie says, "Well, you said you had a story.
What happens to a mouse after they die?
Is this a riddle?" And you see that some of them kind of turn, like the two that were told to do something kind of turn their heads and look at each other, and the old one kind of snaps his head back and says, "Psst," and then oh, and they look and they kind of go back to their ways.
Uh, no riddle, but it may be of great importance to what I am about to share. I am a humble bat. I don't know what you mouse folk believe, but it may matter to what I'm about to say.
Well then, say it.
So he's not going to answer my question. Oh.
Uh, he he said, yeah, he says, I would
Okay.
like you to, yeah, he
Okay.
just says that. He
Okay.
says, well then,
Okay.
say it.
Proceed. Okay.
Proceed with your story.
I am new here. I am a traveler passing through, but I think I've pieced together a bit of a story. I don't want to offend, so please don't take umbrage if I am off in. But I think that your community has created fantastic magical creations. I don't know why, for whatever the reason, for generations, eons by our lifespans. And I think that you would, in the past perhaps, transport these creations out of this community to share with others. For whatever reason, that's not important to me. But I think at one time, one of those transports may have met an untimely and unfortunate end. And that's why I ask you, what do you believe happens to a mouse folk after they die? Because I would then ask you if there is any stories of which you know of a transport caravan that left here and never returned, or met an untimely in the tunnels beneath us.
He listens to this and unwillingly is nodding his head as you tell him parts of their tradition. And when you mention the caravan, he looks at you, like really leans in for a minute, and he says, "You are new here, and you
I take a
know
bite of my bug sandwich.
he, his nose furrows a little bit, and he says, "But you know things, and I don't know how. What is your purpose here?" And he, are you are you with him? And he just, without looking at Tufts, he points to him. Are you with this fool? And
I
Tufts is like,
have two jobs that one job is to make sure this mouse is able to find safe conveyance and is not harmed, injured, or endangered in his quest to see you. It is important to him. I want to keep him safe. I have no purchase as to whether you and he are friends or not, but that is job one for me. I want to protect this young mouse fellow.
mhm.
Job two for me relates to my story because I have tasted of lavender loan honey, and I have met a spirit of one of your community. And
You
my second job is to bring that spirit home so it can be at peace.
make a perception roll for me, please.
See,
While he's rolling that,
my biggest
when
concern is that the mice think that all mouse spirits are demons, and I'm going to be a witch now. But let's see. You wanted a perception?
Perception roll, and then Wensley, tell me what you're doing while this
I
is all
mean, he
going.
just like, so this is the first time Wensley has become aware of this thing because how we had more or less kept the jar and everything secret.
Mhm.
So he hears all of this and he just goes, "Huh, neat."
Huh?
That's
It's a
you
21.
a 21. Okay, so you notice, him react to the words that you're saying,
Mhm.
even though he is trying not to. You see the motions of mice who are not supposed to be listening, but clearly are, as they do their tasks, slow down as you mention the spirit of one of their own.
So
Um,
not for nothing, but Howie loves this. He is like soaking in this.
mhm. You also hear the sound of, like, you hear like a kind of a sound, like that sound of like an opening. You know when a jar opens up?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you hear that sound as well. Somewhere in your pack. Just by chance. I don't know what it is. And
Total
there,
coincidence.
total coincidence. Who knows, man? Um,
Yeah.
and um, and so the old mouse says, um, "You've found a jar. and he
I
puts out
do.
his hand.
I shake his hand.
He bats your hand away. He says, "You found a jar. Let's see it. Do you have it? Or did you leave it? Where did you find a jar?"
In the tunnels beneath us. Maybe a day and a half journeys hence by foot. I would show it to you, but I still would like you to answer my question. I've
He
told you my piece.
he says, "What happens after is not really our concern." You hear one of the little, one of the small ones kind of go, "Ghost mice," and the other one go, "I know," and then he just kind of turns and goes, "Tss," and they both look and scurry off and start going up the stairs. Their task being done, and he says, "We have far greater concerns in the present than in our inevitable future, but there are always stories. There's always things which we can't understand."
That's
Okay.
most things.
So I would.
Looks
So
at
what?
you sideways, like he just turns slowly. He like slowly looks at you, decides he doesn't like it, and discerns, goes back to where he was talking.
So what Howie is probably going to do at this point is go into his bag and not present the honeypot, but take a couple of steps back into the party
Mhm.
and turn around and basically see if he can contact his ghost mouse friend and
Okay,
basically have a side conversation with Willow, sort of catch her up.
for sure. So you turn around, and you open your bag, and you see that the hinge of the jar had like a small hinge on it, basically.
Mhm.
So the top kind of like popped right off, and you see that it is open. Um, it's just sitting there open, a slight gleam in it, and immediately as you take that turn around, there is Tuft kind of sees this opportunity and runs up to the front and immediately starts trying to um, badger the old mouse man, who sees him, and so Tufts is like, "Well, since I'm here, I was wondering if you would once again reconsider." And he says, "Ah, I should have left you down there." And then this old mouse man turns and starts trying to walk away with this mouse, his book wide open, spouting facts and numbers, as this mouse just kind of keeps trying to bat him, as he heads towards a workstation. But what are you trying to say to Willow?
Well, I would say, I think we've arrived. I think you're home. We're in a room with a bunch of other mouse folk, and they're really serious. So I want to make sure that this would be an okay time to let you out to see your home. Or do you want us to sneak off and find someplace, more secreted?
There is no answer.
Hmm. Okay. I will. Ugh. I guess I can't tell if the jar is empty or not. I will see if I can seal the jar back up again.
100%. It works like you go to close it, and it closes like a regular jar, right? You're
Okay.
interacting with a jar, and so it closes. The latch closes. Nothing happens. It it never seemed magical within itself, right? It
Yeah.
always just seemed like a normal jar, and it is continuing to act that way.
Okay. So I'll then take the closed jar out in my hand and walk back up to this elder mouse folk and see if I can divert away from Tuft's badgering.
You catch them mid argument. Tuft says, Tuft is spouting numbers, and he says the percentage is low, and I'm telling you the influx of the influx of profit that you would have, the you don't understand the market, you don't understand the value of what you create here. And the man is kind of trying to hit him away. He says, you don't understand anything. Value isn't important. You talk of numbers, you talk of price.
Mhm.
And he you don't even know. You don't understand the problem. And he is in front of you can see that he's trying to reorganize a workstation that clearly some stuff um, had been used, but he was just like placing things back, as if ignoring this mouse would make him go away, which clearly isn't working.
So I
Alright.
think at that point, Wensleydale's
Well,
gonna come
So
over.
I'll just sort of. Oh, go ahead.
Here, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see what Wensley's gonna do, but then definitely
So
how he jump on in.
he's kind of been listening to what Tufts is trying to say, and just he's getting more and more frustrated for his own reasons about all of this, you know, um, pestering and not leaving someone alone and everything. And he just kind of comes over and very gently, not forcefully or harshly, just kind of tries to pick Tufts up by the scruff of the neck
Mm.
and like walk him away backward. He just like starts walking backward. And he's just like, "You brought us all this way to talk about math?"
make a strength check for me, please.
All right.
Yeah, and we'll do an opposing one for Tufts because he's not
Okay.
gonna. Yeah,
Well, that's an
okay.
8.
That's an 8. No modifier, no anything like that.
Well, it's 8 with my +1 strength. I think I'm actually going to use my advantage on this though, because I
Yes.
really want this to happen.
Amazing.
That
Absolutely.
still only comes out to an 11.
You know what? He rolled a 10 and he ain't strong. So you grab him, and if you've ever tried to pick up a 3-year-old who doesn't want to be picked up, it is actually a very difficult thing to do. So
Mhm.
he uses all of his weight to try and get out, but you were able to like scoop up another very large arm and pick him up.
Mhm.
And he starts talking at you. He said, but you don't understand the this is everything. This is why I'm paying you. Please let me do my job so I can pay you. And how are you going to respond to that?
Basically, Wensleydale says, if he's not going to talk to you, you can't do your job. So you got to at least wait until he's willing to talk to you. Just come here. And he's going to walk him, 10, 15 feet away, just enough that he's out of the conversation. And then he's just going to put him down on the ground and sit on him.
He is sat upon, and you can tell that at first he's kind of trying to tussle his way out of it. Mice are very actually make a grapple check for me, please, because
All right,
mice are
yeah.
very good at getting out of situations.
Now, what's that going to be? What's grappling? Like,
It's going to be
what
like
do
a
I add to that?
strength athletics check. Yeah.
Okay, that's an 18.
Woo!
Hey.
Yeah, and he got a 4. So
Mhm.
you see the way he's going to go, and with the length of your body, you just kind of like down more
Right.
body, and you just
I'm like twice his size.
100%. And he is squished, and you can tell that he's trying to get out of it, and then just stops. And he's like, "Will you just please let me out? I
Soon.
swear." Okay. Um, Howie, what you see is that you see that the mouse the mouse is continuing to work on this part, on this table that is empty. It's well kept, it's well cleaned, but it's empty. And he says, "The mouse never understands, doesn't understand the problem." And his shoulders sag. Jinx, where are you in relation in this room right now? Are you by the door? Are you like, where exactly are you right now?
I'm probably by the door, just kind of overseeing everything, keeping keeping a way out for the
Okay.
group, kind of
Can you
thing.
make a can you make a perception check for me, please?
Oh, I would love to.
LST probably comes along when she sees him reorganizing his little workstation. She's like, no, no, that doesn't go there. And starts reorganizing things with her eye stalks.
That is a 12 for perception.
Okay. There is it's a cold winter day. And you notice like the room is very empty. It's very sparse. There aren't a lot of mice here. And the sound that gets your attention is the buffeting of a cold wind against um, against these large windows that just kind of hit of that of a hard cold wind kind of pressing itself against this tree. And there's a rustling of empty branches above. There you may have seen some movement or something. It could have just been snow outside of that window, but that's all that you notice. LST, you notice that they're like he watches you move things, and you can tell that he doesn't like it, but you can tell that he also knows it makes sense. And he kind of just watches you put something there. And at first he's like, "Well, actually," and then you put it back. He's like, "Oh," and then you put something else somewhere. And like, "Oh,"
Right?
and then you do a third one.
Oh, that's what she just right?
Yeah, and he looks at you and he says, "Thank you, thank you." Howie, was there anything that you wanted to do? Your action was interrupted.
Oh, I was just going to bring the empty honey pot to the elder mouse and say, "Here is what we found." No, he'll sort of say, "Here, this is what I found in an old wreckage, so aged as to be turned to. Now, why don't you tell me what this is and what it contained? Because I'd sure like to get some more."
He he looks at the honeypot down, and you watch his hand kind of reach out slowly and touch the top of it, and almost like um, a prized old memory, something you find in the attic of like your childhood. He handles it with care and love, and he says, "This is something that we pride ourselves in making, that we tend to, that we care for." And he turns and he says, "And it is something that we make less and less of every single day." And he turns and he starts heading towards the window. And he walks and he just walks towards the windows small enough that half of it, he's a small mouse, even by mouse standards. You think that he's a whole head smaller than Tufts. His ears are wide and he's got a good frame, but they're just short, small white mice here. And he looks out this window longingly and just shakes his head as the room becomes emptier and emptier.
I just go up to him and say, something's clearly troubling you and this place. What is the problem you speak of? And perhaps how could we help?
He just he points for a moment outside. His hand touches the glass, just taps it once. You look outside and it is a field of white and snow. The wind is blowing snow in piles across itself, and they move slowly like sand. And you see as one covers the body of a giant bumblebee frozen on the ground, and you see another bumblebee on its back in ice, half submerged, and then another and another and another. And he just looks out the window and he says, "How can we tend something that's dying and we don't know what it's dying from?" And that, my friends, is where we are going to take our 5-minute break. We will be back in a second. We are going to take a very quick facilities break, and please stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back in a minute. Take care. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. All right, we're
Waka
back.
waka.
Hey, welcome back. Thank you for coming. Air, I heard I cut out as soon as you came in, so thanks for sticking around, man. This is thank you for coming. We have taken our break. We are relieved. We are relaxed. We are happy to be here. And before I get back into our adventure, the one thing that I forgot to mention is that tomorrow at 8 p.m. on this very channel, we have an after show that we are calling Small Talk. Our producer, Jareka, whom is here, you cannot see, but her presence is known. And our good friend, at Drunk Phytologist on Twitter, or Dr. Phyto as we are calling her, do an after show where they actually talk a lot of science and like the cool anatomy of the things that may or may not be happening on the stream today or that have happened in the past. So if you have any questions for Dr. Phyto or any text stream questions for Jareka, what I'm going to say is that exclamation point questions in our stream, and we can collect all of them and do some really cool stuff. It was really neat to watch. I am very humbled. And yeah, it's just cool to see the anatomy behind the made up things that we present for you. So when last we were here 5 minutes ago, we have basically experienced that you see that there is a die out of bees in this cold field, that these giant honeybees, imagine the size um, of like a small car basically, or like a very thick Vespa, are upside down. It's two C's thick. So it just upside down, their bodies laid out in the cold snow of the winter. And he this mouse is just looking, and he says, and Tufts is well stationed under Wensley, and he says quietly enough to Howie, he says, he wants us to sell. What can we? Our stores are minimal. Therefore, we sustain ourselves. We use it in times of need for trade and supplies. What what do we what can we sell what we can't have? If we can make honey, we would continue our tradition of bringing it to market, but this, as he points out, has been slowly getting worse over the past few years and seasons, and well, I'm afraid that we've reached a critical point.
Did anything happen to announce its oncoming, the onset of this chill?
The winter doesn't seem to be it. There were a few that seemed to fall ill a few seasons ago, but the hive managed. We have a way to get up. We have stairs that run along the top. We don't go through the middle. We don't know how deep the hive runs down into the tree itself. And we tended gingerly, but we only go as far as they will let us, and everything seemed fine, but over a while they seem to be less inclined to our entrances, and this season they have we have we have not attempted to go up. It's been a terribly cold winter, and we are small. We generally just go up in the spring, uh, or in the fall at the latest. The trek up is treacherous, but this might be, unless something is able to change, this might be the last season for the loan.
If this mouse folk and his associates would be of aid to you in this, would you not accept it?
He kind of stops for a minute and he says, it may be the fool's errand, but if you wish to, he kind of looks at you, sees the gear that you have, acknowledges you're an adventurer,
Mm-hmm.
As if you wish to travel to the hive and gather information or reverse or solve the rot or problem that is underway, then of course we would accept this help. It would you would bring us back to life. We are dying.
Hmm. Okay. Howie is going to excuse himself and that he have a moment to discuss with Tufts and with the others.
Okay.
Um, as Howie is coming back to the group, um, Wensleydale has sort of picked up on the majority of what this was about, and um, he calls to his wasp companion Sid, and sends Sid over to the window to observe and see if, like, through whatever method of communication that Wensleydale and Sid have, see if he can see if a wasp can have some insight into this problem that other creatures might not, that it could then convey back to Wensleydale.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that a lot. So send give yourself a yeah, give yourself Wensleydale, give him a perception check or
Okay.
perception or nature. I would accept that as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's a natural 20.
Nice, nice, nice,
Meow, meow,
Which
meow, meow.
nice.
comes out to a 22.
Amazing. So you tell him and he
Hmm.
like acknowledges, goes off, and you see him like he hovers up above the mouse looking out, and you immediately see him kind of drop like just a small level and
Hmm.
kind of press himself to the window.
Like
uh
he's in shock.
yeah, and then he kind of and then he very quickly, like as if he is running from something, flies back to you and lands on your
Hmm.
shoulder.
Probably
um
like halfway hiding behind me to keep me between himself and the window.
Um, you can tell that there's a sense of that he feels that he needs to defend himself, but he also understands um, a he also understands that there is a need to defend you.
Okay.
So yeah. Um, so he's kind of in two places there. Um,
Okay. So would Wensleydale's takeaway from this more or less be like, there's a threat we need to fight here, like the
yeah,
danger here is an enemy rather than like a disease or a,
yeah, you
something a
can,
little bit more environmental.
yeah, you think that there is you think the Wensley's yeah, you're like Sid is reacting to a threat of danger. So he is yeah, so he is definitely working. um you think that there is a like a physical threat. Like you can't tell,
Hmm.
seeing if it's a disease or a rot versus like creatures would be hard to gauge. um
Okay.
but you know that there is something that needs to be solved.
Okay.
Yeah, and you feel that he feels threatened by it as well.
Okay.
Our producer Jareka has just reminded me that for people who are just coming in right now, our characters have an inspiration mechanic that we're calling they're like action points, basically. That basically everyone in the game has been given an inspiration style action point that they can use during this stream. It will no longer exist after this stream, but they will get a new one next time, and it's hoped to like grease a roll, or like if something's like really important. And inspiration points also exist here too, so some people have a couple charges tucked away. um, nice. So
Okay.
so what do you do with that then?
So by this point, Wensleydale has gotten off of Tufts, has let him up off the ground,
Mhm.
um, and he goes over to this older mouse whose name we still, I think, have not learned.
It's true.
And Wensleydale's not tactful enough to ask for it. So he just kind of comes up close to him, close enough that he's like, the mouse is obviously going to be aware he's there, and he just
Mhm.
says, "There's something out there we can fight."
Then he kind of he looks at you, uh, and you can see him pondering that for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and who took damage during the battle last game? Okay, he sees that there are like some burned wounds on
Mm-hmm.
your fur, right? Clear damage. And he says he looks and he says, "Well, I would recommend a night's rest, and then I would beg you to fight it." And he says, he looks at, he turns and kind of looks at you, Wensleydale, and Howie, Jink, and Long Sparkly Trail. Um, his eyes kind of hesitantly look at Tufts for a moment and says, if you are good for your word and you will head up the tree tomorrow, you may rest in our quarters above. There are fewer of us now than there used to be. You may spend the night. We have a meal, and we would answer questions or provide what we can for your journey up, but our knowledge of this is limited. Is there anything else?
Wensleydale kind of like notices him looking over at Tufts and remembers, the argument that they were having, and kind of leans down very conspiratorially and just maybe a little bit too loud whispers, "We'll help you here, and I don't care if you do business with him afterward. He's a dork. He likes math."
Kind of the old man nods a little bit
Mm-hmm.
at the dork part. Like, yeah.
Yes,
Um,
indeed.
the math part he doesn't quite understand. But he he approves. Jink, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
Yeah, Jink has been kind of quietly watching all of this and taking it in, and his face is very serious. And he says, "Well, you know, the problem is that even if we're to leave now and just like not create any change here, the purpose of bees out in the world is very important. And as a druid, it is my sworn duty to protect things like this. So I am committed to staying here as long as it will take to fix this problem."
The old mouse nods and says, "Thank you." You can see that there are at the top of the stairs in that hole that leads to what you now know is their quarters. You can see the noses and ears of younger mice kind of poking out and under, listening to all of this, whispering to themselves. And then once they're noticed, kind of scurrying back up. Um, and he turns and he says, "You'll find beds upstairs." And he turns to the larger of the creatures, and he says, "My apologies. I'm sure we can push a couple together." Um,
Oh, I
now, if
don't
you're
really need a bed. It's okay. Just need somewhere to curl up.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
There's plenty of grass on the ground here, right?
There might be some hay above that we can put. Yes. Um, I wouldn't. It's very cold outside. I wouldn't recommend it. Sleeping out there. Um, I need to go check on a few things. That was what I was doing before I was interrupted. Now, if you'll excuse me, and he kind of turns away. Um, He turns around and he says, "Please don't touch anything." And he turns back and just
Wensleydale was
slowly...
definitely in the middle of reaching out to touch something, and his hand just comes back.
um, he heads towards the wall that is the division of the tree itself. It is everything in this room is sparse, whitely painted. Um, there are very light curtains that are kind of rolled up above the windows with small pull ropes. You can tell that they're made of the same purple cloth as the garments that these mice wear. The wall itself, you think, is carved out of the original tree. So it has all of the knotting and lines of the age of the tree itself. And he knocks on the small part of the barn door that is meant to open for a single person, and someone behind it opens, and he turns to you and he says, "Supper is at 8." And then he walks in and closes the door, and you find yourself in an empty room. What shall you do?
I kind of want to go over to Tufts and how we would say, if you've had so much correspondence with them, why do you come with these tactics that are clearly so ineffective? Surely you had to anticipate that all of the noise you just created would only irritate this elder mouse. Wasn't this something you could have anticipated?
I am... You can tell that he's like, he is frustrated, and he is kind of knitting his brow still under... Well, now that Wensley has sort of... Have you moved? Is he...
Oh
he's
yeah,
out?
he's
Yeah.
completely up and free.
100%. So he's refocusing and adjusting things. I am a mouse of paperwork. I was given very specific tasks, and I have done my best. And that is, quite frankly, part of why you were paid. And it looks like that for the minute you have been successful. Now, you can either go up and save this place, and needless to say, I will not be joining you during that, but I will be trying to negotiate a deal with this very, very stubborn mouse when you arrive. So
So when you fail to do that, we return successful from what is obviously a scope creep in this engagement. We will talk about our adjusted fee. Good night.
he you see him, like, his whole body tenses with frustration.
Well, I just look at him and I say, "Oh, you're so cute. Let's not forget what brought you here in one piece. Because I
Yeah,
anticipate you might want it to get you back in one piece as well."
it's true. Those potato bugs out there are quite a handful.
Yeah, I had one
Possibly
in
even
each
4
hand at one point.
handfuls.
They're delicious.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
How he picks his tooth with an
Gross.
antenna.
He I I suppose that's true. Well,
I mean
I
no disrespect, but I just would appreciate it if we kept in mind uh, the relationship and how it is evolving as we go.
we will negotiate terms when you have reached your end of the bargain. And you see him, you see him just kind of walk with tunnel vision up the stairs, and like, hand clasped to his bag, just holding it in a very dedicated way as
So
he...
while I'm talking to him,
Mhm.
can I try to steal that book?
100%. Yeah. 100% you can. He would have, yeah. So I'm gonna
LSD
ask...
sees some of this conflict and kind of comes up behind the mouse and pats him with an eye stalk and is like, "Yes, we've been very helpful."
So it's at that moment that you pat him that he turns back, and Howie, you kind of see that moment that the bag kind of scoots forward. You notice that the flap
Now's my
isn't
chance.
necessarily tied up, right?
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
We'll do a sleight of hand.
Don't
Ooh,
forget your advantage.
I'm gonna spend my juice point on this.
juice point.
We have a 19 plus 3.
Ooh.
Yeah,
We're talking about a 22.
yeah. Your claws very deftly. You just like you are able to quickly open the flap, and it's almost as if you hit the flap open, and within the time that it takes for it to go up and to fall back down on its own accord, almost as if the momentum of the bag is doing it itself, you are in and out, and you just feel the binding of this small book, with like a dark bark skin, um, edging to it, and you just grab it and tuck it away, and he is none the wiser.
Yeah.
Mhm. Is there?
Is Howie trying to keep this secret from the rest of us as well?
No, not from just from Tufts. Howie just wants to. His motive is just to make sure that there's nothing dark or nefarious behind Tufts' engagement that has been covered up as he's spoken to us. So, Howie's goal ultimately is to scan the book and return it sight unseen, hopefully. But he's not going to keep it a secret. If we go retire, he's going to openly share that, you know, he's a little worried about Tufts and he wants to make sure that we're not being double crossed in some way. And so I kind of spirited away the book.
Okay. Jink's gonna kind of lean back against a wall, arms crossed, looking a little bit bothered at the thievery, but he understands.
Yeah.
So he's just not saying anything about it.
Just borrowing it.
You all have the room to yourself. There, every single mouse is either behind that back door, or you have, or is above. There is not a lot of time, um, before the meal is going to be prepared, but the room is, yours. So why don't we quickly just have, some perception rolls, and then you can tell me what you would like to do. If you would just like to retire and have your meal, or if you want to.
While we're all getting set to roll those perceptions, I just want to say that as Tufts was leaving, like just after he leaves, Wensleydale kind of leans over to Howie and goes, "That guy's just a few whiskers short of a snout, isn't he?"
I love it.
It's amazing.
I think he's trying, but yeah.
And it's also sort of ironic, and Howie would definitely not miss this, for that to be coming from Wensleydale, who's clearly the least intellectually gifted member of the party.
So
Totally.
in our chat, I see that Jinx has rolled a 15. I see that, LST has rolled a 6.
12 for me.
12 and 7. Okay, perfect. So, it is Jinx looking at, you kind of have the best view of everything, and it is a pretty barren area. Up big viewing arms, and actually maybe it is you're looking around, and there's something that gets both your and, High's attention. So for the first time, like High, you've noticed that High's spirits, he seems lighter on your shoulder now that you're above ground, and natural light is back. But there is like, there's a buzzing that you get from him that is only when there's food for him nearby. So flour, nectar, and
Mm-hmm.
you see him just kind of up and into the air, first high, because this is like a 3-story kind of room. And then he focuses down to one of the work benches that is tucked by the far corner near the stove. and you
Okay.
see him kind of poking at glass. Like you hear like the ping and the and there's a few different things that he's kind of bouncing at, and kind of he backs over to you and backs over and ping 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 and just hovers there looking at them to see, but he can't access, right? But he's found something.
For those who haven't met Hi is a bee hummingbird, which is I said almost said a brand of hummingbirds. Jink will go over and see what Hi is getting into or trying to get into.
So one of the workstations was very that a mouse very quickly moved away from, but clearly didn't have the time to finish tidying. You can tell that there's an old empty barrel beside it, and there is a burner, like a little stone pot that has hot coals out of it, and like almost like a Bunsen. And there are four bottles that are situated on this table. Um, one of them is one of them is thick at the bottom and kind of goes up to a small point, and you could hold it in one hand, and it is clear. It's very light, and it's almost sparkles in it. Um, Another one is it's round at the bottom and has almost like a thick coffee cup with an old kind of a cork, um, and it's yellow and gold, like a soft glow, like wheat and sunlight. There's one that is round, is amber, and it's amber, and if you touch it, like Jinx touches it and reacts, like kind of pulls itself away. Um, and if you reached out, you would find that it's warm to the touch. And finally, there's a very stout one. It's shorter than all of them, and within it's like a thick square that centers right off the top with a thick cork, and it's small and brown liquid on the inside, that seems thick like molasses. And these four potions were clearly something that um, is clearly one of the mice has been working on.
Okay. Oh, I didn't think to start writing them down till the second one. So
That's
what
okay.
was the first one?
I can send this to you as well, but there is a potion that is thick at the bottom that tapers to the top, that is very light and nearly clear, but it almost sparkles.
Ooh. Okay. I got all the other ones.
Amazing. I love that you wrote those down. That makes me very, very happy.
I mean, my notes for this game are far superior to all my other notes because this is the most cutest one. Okay, so
That's
I
the
will.
nicest compliment.
The most cutest game, and your descriptions are always amazing. So, um, I will pick these up. Which one does Hi seem most interested in?
That's the thing. He is going from one to one to one equally. They're
Okay.
all interesting. They all seem like food to him. And so he is trying. You like when you get close, he looks at you, right? As if like it's one of those like, "Mom, come on, like feed me," right? But
Yeah.
it, like when my dog knows that it's time, and he kind of goes to one of them and taps on the bottle, and then goes to the next one and taps on the cork, and the round one kind of rolls onto itself a little bit and goes around. They all seem like food.
Okay. So I'll talk to him, um, and just be like, uh, let's hang tight because we don't know what these are, and I know you're hungry. and I give him a good berry in the meantime.
He
I
is
forgot to use my
reluctant.
accent.
That's okay. It's all good. I've been saying your name 2 or 3 different ways, so I
That's
apologize.
good. We're going
Um,
good here.
but you can tell that that he's disappointed. There's a and you hand him
Come
the
on,
good
Mom.
berry, looks at it reluctantly, looks at those, then finally like just jams his snout into the good berry, and you can tell that he is enjoying the nectar of this thing and comes to terms with the fact that he has to just land on your shoulder for a little while.
Yeah. I'll open them and smell them. Are any of them vaguely familiar to me? That I would know what they are?
Whew, that's a very good question. From your okay, so the first one almost smells like ozone. It kind of smells like yeah, it smells like that feeling before a storm. It doesn't remind you
Okay.
of any potion that you've had before, but I'm not sure if Jink has had many experiences with magic users, but this smells magical. It the the one that's yellow and glows like sunlight smells. It almost smells like spring, like that feeling of a hot summer day, that that kind of sense of the air, that it's thick and warm, um, but you don't recognize it. The red one you recognize. This is it's different. It is definitely sweeter um, than than any kind of potions that you've bought at a store. But this one seems like the one that you might have taken when you've been injured in the past. That's what I'm going to say there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
final one,
It has a healing property, like
yeah,
a potion.
maybe. Who knows? Exactly. Um, the other one has this combinations of smells that it smells like bark and dirt, but it also smells like syrup and coffee. There's like a
Ooh.
there's like a rich deepness to it.
Oh,
Um,
take me to this bottle.
I know. I want that as like a cologne. Sounds amazing.
mhm. It doesn't smell like anything that you have necessarily purchased at a store before, but it definitely has, right, like this place. You've known that this place has the reputation of having magical properties to it. So there's definitely something in that each of these do.
All right. Okay. Interesting. Um, it's been a little while. What are the rest of your characters' classes? Oh God, Smellfolk.
Smell folk. Oh,
Thousand
Cal. Amazing.
Yeah. So
Oh,
what are your characters' classes? Because I don't remember. I know I'm a druid.
I am a
Ranger.
rogue.
LSD is a druid, but she hasn't really shown it yet.
actually,
And
you know what? Sorry.
Mhm.
Embers, what would you say?
Oh, I was to say I'm a rogue and Abin.
Insurance
Cleric.
cleric. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, a cleric. Okay.
The last one, it doesn't smell like a potion that you have ever tasted, but it reminds you of practices that druids have done. There is something about it, about like a ritual, a defensive mechanism. There's a hint to it there, right? That there's something about it that seems familiar as a druid. And it's the
Yeah.
only reason that you would know that.
Yeah. It almost reminds me of like a kind of like skin cream made of bark. They call it bark skin.
They call it bark skin cream.
Okay.
You can get it at Shoppers, you guys.
You can get it at smell folks.
Smell, folks. Yeah. No, thank you for asking for classes because you would totally know that one.
Okay, cool. I will go and show these to LST, who is, I I assume, is a druid, probably more versed in magic than some of the other non-spellcasters in our group, and uh, show them to her and kind of like hold them up to her, to like one eye stalk or the other one, whichever one is like focusing more, and just be like, Ed, have you ever tried one of these? I found them over there, and I don't really know what we're gonna be doing with them, but they might be of use somehow.
She kind of squints at him a bit. She's like, I usually make my own goo. Um,
Ooh, a goo check.
a goo check. Yeah, what kind of check should she do?
Oh man, that's a great question. Arcana, nature. You could even necessarily give me a history check if you're comparing, like, because you learned so much from your grandma. Tell me what check works for you for this goo.
I think well, history and nature kind of come out to be the same, so I think she'd do a nature check and see if it compares to anything that she's found in the world along making our way across from this shore.
Okay.
So that's going to be a 19.
Oh, 100%. Okay, so the small one, you are able to confirm what Jink suspected, that the small one is a potion of bark skin that you have that will give you a single charge of that spell to use. The second one, sorry, what was your roll again?
19.
It was 18? 19. Okay. Um, you the red one, which has been deduced, but I will confirm with that roll. You have this within this potion is 2 charges of greater healing potion. So
Ooh, 2.
2 charges. It is a big potion. It is too much for anyone to drink.
Diggity dang.
Mm-hmm. The gold one is harder to tell. It reminds you of some some people that you knew, um, that were good with music, but you can't necessarily place it. You know, there's a lot of it though, so it's got a few charges to it at least. So I would say 4. There are 4 charges within that one, and you think that last one, that like the very first one, the small thin one, you think that would make someone like you go very, very quickly.
Ooh.
So she probably, with the bark skin one, she'd probably say, well, this one will make your fur hard like my shell, which is very beneficial. And say, the healing one, this one will heal you, but I am covered in healing goo, so,
So why bother?
so whatever. With the musical one, she might just say, music people, there's a bunch of it. Not making any sense, really. Like, I knew some people one time who made music, and this goo kind of looks like them. And,
Amazing.
Oh my god.
Oh god, I love it.
and then the last one, she looks at, and her eyes kind of twinkle. She's like, if no one was looking, this one might make you go real fast.
Ooh, kind of like you when nobody's looking.
What do you mean?
Oh, nothing. Never mind. Don't even worry about it.
Oh my god.
LST, I would like to reward you an inspiration point. That was wonderful, and I love you very much. That was great.
That's so good.
So I assume that you take these potions, or are you leaving them there? Like
Oh yeah, we shake them.
100%. Jareka's making this. No, we shouldn't. I'm full. I'm too full.
Too much.
Full up.
I couldn't even if I wanted to.
Couldn't possibly.
Um, awesome. So within, you can decide where you're holding them, but you know that you have a potion of 2 charges of healing. You have a single charge of bark skin. You have 4 charges of something and 1 charge of something else that you can use at your ledger whenever you want. Now, is there anything that you wish to do before you retire?
I want to read this book.
Oh yeah,
Or
okay.
get in that book.
Mm-hmm. So, with a moment quiet and the daylight still present within the room, you crack this book up, and the first few pages are um, they're basically within it is the recordings of all of the interactions that Tuft has had with this um, with this single mouse. Which reading the letter, like at first, Tuft has this very long and polite letter introducing himself, his company, his employer, the plus minuses, the benefits, and then there's a very short letter that says no rice. Like that's signed rice. That's it.
Oh, okay. Rice.
There is then there are pages of this. There are pages of more. There are counter arguments. There are addendums. There are new numbers, and then it says go away, and then rice. Then this happens again and again and again until finally it says rice finally replies, "You've never even been here. What would you know?" And within those after that there are scribbles of notes of strategy, of trying to get there, of trying to work out um, percentages and different offers and counter offers, and it's mainly numbers. You know that this mouse lacks the personal strategies that would make these successful. He understands, like as you figured out, he understands like there's an if this then that, right? Like if he says no to like a 40% take, then you offer a 35% take, right? If then you go down to 20, right? You never go under 20, right? And so there you can tell that the first few offers are definitely predatory, that they are trying to that he and his employer are trying to gain as much value out of these contracts. There is language about exclusivity that is questionable. There is also like long-standing rights to product that you would, I don't know, that I think you might need to do like an investigation check to dig into a little bit more. But yeah, it's all laid out here.
Interesting.
Hi,
But there
Pumpkin.
are no there that speak to anything. The most nefarious thing is these predatory terms in a negotiated contract kind of thing, right?
What you see so far, yeah. I mean, do an investigation check and
I shall
mm-hmm.
with my -1 I rolled a 2.
Okay.
So let me just do a little cross-checking. That's a 1.
Yeah,
So
it is what you can see from what you're reading, and you're trying to read it as best as possible. It is a lot of, yeah, it's a lot of just contractual mumbo jumbo. That, and some of it is written, you think, to present to be confusing, right? Like that these are terms that are meant to turn back into each other. That if someone who could understand, could really take a hold of this stuff, could break it down, could find the traps within it, you know that they're traps, but you just can't figure out exactly what they are.
Some advanced documancy business right here.
uh, but you don't see anything,
Right.
of ill intent for
It's not like
anything
step
but
1,
financial.
invade the hive. Step 2, plant doomsday device. Step 3,
Exactly.
Step 4, profit.
Yeah. There's none of that. It
Okay.
is, yeah, it's financial murder. It is not actual murder, right?
Well, who can blame anyone for that? Okay, so my plan then is going to be to try and slip this back into Tuft's possession, or or to act like it fell out of his sack and I'm bringing it back to him. But I kind of I kind of kibitz with Abendstern a little bit as we're looking through this book and sort of saying, looking at each other, shrugging occasionally, and then telling the party that this is just a bunch of numbers and terms, and you can tell this is a business proposition, but Tufts seems to be up front. All these notes seem to be up front. Although I do want to double check and see if there's anything written about us.
Oh yeah, for sure. He near the back where some of the scribbling is more fervent, less regimented, right? Clearly done in bad light. Um, you can see that he has been writing notes about the people surrounding him. It basically says otter, and it says like Rivertail,
Dumb.
simpleton. Yep, right. Simpleton. It says
Heavy.
yeah, exactly. Martin, right? Very tall, dangerous. Question mark. It says snail, and then there's a few dots, and I'm not quite sure yet. It says croaky, very strong, good at poker, hard to read. Bat folk, far too nosy. That's that's basically the extent of those.
Okay, so I'm gonna give the book to Abendstern. He'll always suspect that I stole this from him, but if you give it back to him, it's much less likely that he'll come after me as a thief, which is really not fair. I just borrowed the book. Think you could hold on to this, and as soon as you see Tufts, return it to him?
You see your brother is like just shaking his head, right?
Yeah.
He says, he suspects you're a thief because you are a thief.
If I had $1
But
every time.
I will take part in this if it's for the good. And he
LST
kind of
see this and be like, things get stuck to me all the time. It might just be stuck to me somewhere.
Abendstern looks and there's a crack of a smile on his face, and he just throws the book, and it just lands. There's a slight
Howie is just like, that
jostling.
is one smart snail.
and yeah, it shakes the shells around it, but it hangs well amongst what you carry on you. Within when
So
that
good.
happens, you hear within your shell, LST, you hear in a like a oh, it's nice in here. And that's, I don't know, only you can hear it. So
Oh.
LST just kind of looks confused for a second and like slimes back into her shell without saying anything to everybody.
there is within your shell, amongst whatever is in there, there is a small ghost mouse dressed. She is dressed just like the man that you just saw. She's tiny, and you think that she has actually been able to condense her size down to fit properly in here. And she says, hi. Hi, I haven't been here in forever. I really like what you've done in here. It's really nice. I'm Willow. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Long Sparkly Trail. I figured you'd show up eventually.
Yeah, your friend's carrying my home. He's nice, but I didn't really want to say hello. And I think he wants I think he thinks I'm supposed to stay here, but I don't want to stay.
Not in this tree.
No, it's so boring. It's so boring here. But there are things. there are some things that I could show you if you wanted to.
I love things.
Oh, then you should go down in the basement. There are some things in the basement that, 1 second, and you see it just go like through your shell under, and then just like, and then it's like, oh, they're still there. Yeah, they're still there. I can show you sometime. I don't know if you're going. I was sort of listening. They want you to go up. Is that it?
I go where I want to go.
Oh, that sounds great. I'd like to go where I want to go too.
Well,
Maybe
you can come with.
maybe we should see the basement when everyone's asleep. I don't think
Oh,
they would.
definitely.
Okay. Yeah. What's Long Sparkly Trail?
Yeah, LST for short. That's a mouthful.
I I I think we're going to be friends. I should go back to my home.
Well, you're welcome to visit anytime. If the spider gives you any trouble, just tell him to mind his own business.
At the spider, she giggles. She says, "I think I'm good. I think we're gonna be friends." And she says, "Okay, when everyone's asleep," and she just like, she just she just goes back down through the bottom of your shell and disappears. Um, and that, my friends, is where we are going to have to end our night tonight. We have reached time. Um, Thank you so much for joining us. It has been, things always take much longer than I think, but I have really, really enjoyed my time with these wonderful people tonight. So
It's real good.
The best.
We are going to be trying to find a time to play together in August. It is the summer, so things get very, very busy. We will be talking together to figure out when we can get Table One back for your enjoyment within a month or so. So until then, if you have questions, I hope we see you tomorrow at Small Talk with our good friend Fido and our incredible producer Jureka. And we look forward to seeing you at here or at Table Two in the future. So stay kind, stay careful. Nope, stay kind, stay curious, stay careful out there. And remember that heroes come in all sizes. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you next time.